everyone, welcome. My name is Maria Tranquilli, and I'm a program manager at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. We will open up for Q&A at the end of this event. Please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout this presentation. None of what we do could be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors. We are humbled by their contributions. During these unique times, we're curious around sentiment and how you are feeling as an entrepreneur. We would like to start by taking a poll to let us know how you are doing in your business right now. How are you currently feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Please let us know. It looks like we're feeling very optimistic today. We're also wondering, what type of entrepreneur are you? Are you currently an entrepreneur that is in business? Are you an aspiring entrepreneur? Or perhaps you have a different position in your company? It looks like we have many entrepreneurs in business in the audience today. And finally, what is keeping you up at night? Is it finance? Is it sales, marketing, scaling, pivoting, your team, or surviving? A three-way tie today. Finance, sales, and marketing is what is keeping us up at night. Thank you all for contributing. Without further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest, Ina Semenyuk, founder and marketing strategist at InnavationLabs. Ina, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, NASDAQ, for having me. And I'm really excited that marketing is keeping you up at night and that you're optimistic. For those who are anxious about the future of the company, we will go through the plan today, how to get you on the road to success. So hopefully you will enjoy the presentation today. Okay, so let's get started. I will share my screen, and as Maria mentioned, there will be a Q&A at the end, so save your questions until then, please. All right, so Startup Marketing 101. You probably already familiar a little bit with marketing, so I hope that some of the things will be familiar to you, but also I hope that you will learn something today as well. We have a lot of content to go through today, so I will be really quick and dynamic. And again, if you have questions, just write them down and ask them later or ask them in the Q&A chat, and then most popular questions will be presented towards the end of the presentation. What we're going to go through today is 5 key things. So how to find your voice, how to start telling your story, whether you are doing it on social media, through a website, and how you can connect with your customers, how you can create content that resonates with your audience. And we all know that this is a huge problem because there's so many questions around and so much time that it takes. It's really challenging. So we'll go through making that an easier process, which tactics you should use, which platforms are right for you, because the spoiler alert, you don't have to be on all the platforms, and this is great news, I hope, for you. The next thing is how to convert your followers, whether it's social media followers, your email subscribers, your existing customers, or your potential customers, into active customers who are also representing your brand. And then finally, how do we find time for all this that we're going to be talking about? So today I'm going to be hosting this session, and you can find me on Twitter or any other social networks as Innavation. You can also drop me an email, check my website, and you can always email me questions if we don't cover them in the Q&A as well. A little bit about my background. My background is in marketing communications and public relations. I worked with fantastic international consumer brands. I worked with Facebook and Skype when they were startups, which was a very exciting time, as you can imagine. And I really coming from this consumer background, what I enjoy now is working with B2B companies and developer-focused companies, because I bring that consumer experience into the work, and I kind of translate from complicated English into human English, and translate the brand from being really complicated and hard to grasp, even for very specific audiences that know what they're talking about and what information and what content they're consuming, into something really palatable and really exciting. So that's what I love about my job, and hope I can demonstrate it to you today. So why have a marketing plan? You know, we live in this crazy pandemic times, and you might be thinking, like, does it even make sense to have a plan, because the world is going crazy? Well, the thing is that, pandemic or not, it is important to have a plan, because it's basically like getting into a car and driving somewhere. If you get into your car, you don't use a map, that's fine, and you will go somewhere, but it's not necessarily where you want to end up. So a marketing plan will help you map out where you really want to go, what tools you have available, and how you can reach that milestone, and how you can reach that destination. Before we jump into the 5 steps that I presented to you at the beginning, we have to cover the fundamentals of the marketing plan. And I hope you really take your time to go through these things in your own time and build that foundation, because that foundation is what you need to start implementing those 5 steps that we're going to be talking today about. So the first and the most important thing: what problem are you solving? Unfortunately, still a lot of startups or a lot of companies do not know, do not necessarily have that product market fit, or do not know how to communicate that. So you really have to be clear about what problem you're solving, what solution like you're offering to your clients, and know that inside out. The second thing is, what's your target market? Who is consuming your product? And again, I strongly suggest that you do not guess, especially if you're an early stage entrepreneur. You really should know your customers. You really should know your audience, talk to them every day, know what keeps them up at night. And that should be your main focus. And then once you do that, then you can move on with the marketing plan and think about your goals. There are lots of different ways you can look at your goals. You might want to increase sales, and probably at the end of the day, everyone wants to have more customers and sell more of the product or services. But you might have steps such as building awareness about your product or service. Maybe you're building or offering something that is not in the market, and you need to educate the market before you go into the sales process. Maybe you want to turn your customers, existing customers, into your advocates. So there could be different goals, and you have to be clear what the process is and how you reach every goal, and what milestone you have before you can move on to the next goal. So that's important. What channels can help you reach your goal? You have to map out what's available to you. You have to see, maybe look at your competitors and see like what channels they are using, what seems to be working for them. And of course, there's a ton of platforms and channels and ways to promote your brand and create those leads. But before you choose what's right for you, you have to map it out. And then what resources are available? Is your team, how many people are on your team? Who's available? Who has what skills? What resources are available to you, not only in terms of people, but also in terms of time and money? And then the last thing is, what's your timeline? I'm sure you've heard tons of times people recommend that you have very tangible goals and very tangible plans. So that includes a marketing plan. Can you map out and see where you want to be in a few months, in a year's time, but really split it down into steps. So once you have these things figured out and really spend time, you can spend time with the team doing this, you will have a good foundation for activating this marketing plan, finding your tone of voice, connecting with your customers, and making those sales. So how do you find your voice? When we look at international brands that are out there, have been, and we've seen that some of them change their voice over time, but usually it's very distinctive. For example, if you look at Virgin Atlantic, it's very dynamic, it's very sexy, it's very stimulating, it's very fun, and you will not mistaken Virgin for anyone else, for any other company. And at the same time, if you look at IBM, it's a professional company. The audience is completely different, and it's more reserved and more kind of calm. And as you know, technology brands often use blue as their color, again, to align with that more conservative position. Even if they are innovators in technology, their audience still has a process that they follow to purchase the services. So this brand reflects their audience and reflects what the brand wants to share with the audience, the way it wants to be portrayed. So the first thing before you find your voice is, this is a good exercise that I hope you can take your time after this session and practice. Can you explain your product or service and the problem you're solving in a media headline? A media headline is usually 60 to 100 characters. Once you start doing this, it's really hard. I do give you a heads up, it's really hard. But before you can start building your voice, you need to know what you're selling. And again, as a founder, you might have an exact idea, and even if it's complicated, your audience that might grasp those complicated concepts, you think they just will easily understand you. This is not how you should think about it. You should think about it that you should expect to explain it to anyone. Will anyone understand you? Can you use can you write this headline without using any jargon and with any specialized words that people from another industry will not understand? And the hint here is what's that human element that your audience will connect with? Because another hint, at the end of the day, your customer, even if it's your customers at B2B companies, at the end of the day, the purchase is made by a person, and the brand is perceived by individuals. So this is something to keep in mind. Every customer is a human being, and your main goal is to understand how this human being thinks, what they live and breathe, and where your product comes into their universe, into their life, into their work life, into their personal life, and how you can connect and what voice will resonate with them. So how do you find your voice? There are a few elements. First one is the character. You have to identify what's the character of your brand, and the character will stay the same over years. It can shift a little bit, but this is the core of your brand. You can brainstorm with your team, write characteristics, write what supports those characteristics. But basically, if you think about your brand as a person, then what would they be like? What would their character be like? The other thing to think about is the purpose of your brand. What do you believe in? What do you support? What do you stand with that is aligned with your target customers? Extremely important, because we live in the times where our customers, they align not only with the product that we offer, but also with the overall approach and with overall set of beliefs that a brand has. The recent political and social economic events showed that, and there's a lot to learn from that, but it's super important that you think about the purpose in addition to the character. Tone of voice. So this is something that can change depending on the situation. So you can adjust that a little bit. It will be still consistent, and it should be consistent across different communication channels and platforms, but it can change a little bit depending on the topic that you're discussing. So for example, your tone of voice might be upbeat, you might be this friend that is giving a recommendation to your customer. But then if you're talking about a socially important cause or issue, then you might get more serious, and this is totally fine. As long as you stay coherent and consistent, this will work for you. Language, extremely important. A lot of brands use very independently of how fun and exciting the brands or the product are. Sometimes companies just use really boring language, or they use the words that are really hard to understand. If you cannot express what your brand and what your solution is about in simple language that is easy to understand, go back to that exercise about the headline and just do it hundreds of times till you figure it out, and test it on multiple people and see if they understand. Test it on your grandma. And then when it comes to language, so for some brands, you can use swearing words if that's like part of your character, and your tone of voice is aligned with that. Maybe you will use that. Maybe you will never use that. So just think about the language and how you express it, and what the selection of words that you use mean to your audience. And the last but very important bit is nonverbal communication. So everything from color, design, how your website looks and feels, to the way the experience works overall. For example, if you have retail locations, or if your representatives, they go and meet with clients. So like, what's the overall nonverbal communication that you're giving as well? So thinking about these 5 things should give you voice, and should help you tell your story. And then again, extremely important, just keep going back to what product you have, what problem you're solving, and what solution you have, and how that connects with this human being behind the screen, behind who's your client. Just keep thinking about them and think about their customer journey, think about their motivations, and start piecing this together using these steps. Okay, so now that you have your voice, how do you create that content? And we've all been there. It's hard. It's there's no time. It's extremely hard to produce high quality content, and the first step to think about starting getting through that noise and that those barriers is to think about like why we as consumers, as people, follow brands, whether on social media, sign up to their newsletters, or read an article featuring the brand. There are a few key things. There are additional things that we do online. So this is purely for the purpose of in relation to content. So we go to pass time, to get entertained, and that's one of the biggest reasons why we spend time online. We want to get help or advice. That's why you Google how to or watch videos on YouTube. You connect with friends, and this is also important when we follow brands on social media. So sharing passion or connection with a brand, and with friends who do that, it does piece everything together. So if you're the only one liking a particular brand and all of your friends like another brand, you might have a disconnect. So if maybe it will work to consumers' advantage, and if someone wants to be different and they do not care about what their friends and family think, but many people, they find comfort in knowing that their friends also connect with the same brands or environments. And the other thing is learn. It's possible that you do not necessarily need immediate help or advice, but you just want to learn about certain things. And then companies that offer certain solutions to problems, they could be part of this process. So this is also important. And then the next step is basically identifying the key challenge, and then anticipating and addressing that need. So again, we go back to what's important for your customer. How do they think? What do they live and breathe? How they think about the problem, what challenges they face on the way, and where does your company come with the solution? And then as the next step, once you've identified that, you can think about how you can deliver tangible value in that content. So if your customer loves to be entertained and your brand happens to deliver services in that space, how do you entertain them so that your brand would be the most engaging on the internet for that audience, for that product? And you should also remember that we all are faced not only with your competitors' activities, but also with the time that we choose to spend on certain things. So browsing Facebook or Instagram is one thing. You could exercise, you could go for walks, or there are lots of different things you are choosing to do. So once you start creating content, you should be sure that this is really worthwhile, the time that your audience will be spending this on. You have to consider the format. So again, depending on your audience, depending on what's important to them, depending on how they consume and when and where they consume this content, format is important. For some, video is much more important. For others, maybe it's the brochure or booklet that they will download and share with colleagues. Maybe it's a podcast. So you have to think about it, again, your customer and how they spend their time and how they consume that content. And then time and place. You can find information and data from various companies in terms of when to post that content and like how certain audiences behave. But at the end of the day, you could rely on the data, but you should not disregard your own audience's behavior. And that's why you should keep going back to your customer, thinking about what their life is like, what their day is like, what it consists of, when they need your product, what might need your product, and what would be their process around this, around deciding to use your product or service. And you should answer those questions, and then you can get validation from companies that share data, but you should know your customer better than anyone. So that's what's going to help you create a really good content. And something that you should not forget is the human factor. Again, behind that screen, whether it's a B2B space or a consumer space, there is a person that is purchasing your product. Whether they might be purchasing it on behalf of the company, but at the end of the day, it's a human being. So how do you create the content that connects with that human being, that person? Why would they be choosing to buy your product? Like, what does it do for them? What emotion is it initiating in this person? Think about that. It's really, really important. So once you've gone through all these steps, where's the wow factor? How does it connect with that human being behind the screen? You should take that into account. And then a couple of things on creating content. We're all human beings, no matter how extroverted or introverted you are, how good you are with creating content, whether you've done it before or not, whether you think you're good at it or not, done is better than perfect. Just starting out is super important. And because without starting, if you just spend too much time on thinking what to produce. And again, it helps to have a plan. You can think about the topics that resonate with your audience, but done is better than perfect. Just start doing it. Start writing that article, start recording that Instagram story, whatever works for you. And you will, over time, you will see much clearer what works for you, but you have to start. And then the second thing, authentic is better than polished. Again, you can spend a lot of time, you can hire people to help you with that, to create this beautiful content. But the good thing is that the times of beautiful polished Instagram stories and the polished picture of a brand, they are going away, and consumers are increasingly, your customers are looking for authenticity. They want to trust you and would believe in you, and therefore you should just get started and be authentic rather than spending a lot of time on making it perfect and beautiful. Okay, which channels are good for your business? So there are so many of them, and we all know that if you wanted to create a plan that covers all these social platforms, and these are not even all of them, there are thousands of platforms that you could use to start generating leads for your business, there would be no time in the world. Like, you could have hundreds of people working on content, but and distributing content through these platforms, but it's impossible to cover everything. So the smartest way is to see what works best for your business. And again, you just need to get started and start testing them to see what works. But if we go through some of these platforms, Instagram is very popular. It works not only for consumer brands. You can see NASA, for example, having a fantastic Instagram account. And there are a lot of other B2B companies that do it really well, but it's primarily consumer focused. It's perfect for solopreneurs. If you're offering a service, if you're maybe a doctor, nutritionist, or a lawyer, and you want to educate your audience, Instagram is perfect for you. So it's not necessarily just for companies that have a lot of visual content, they have physical products. It actually is good also for people who want to explain different concepts, want to educate audiences, their audience through the power of video. And on Instagram, video is so much stronger now than the feed that you would see on the screen, that I would strongly recommend considering this if your audience is on Instagram, and if you have educational content and brand content to share. Also, of course, it's great for entertainment. So a collaboration with influencers, if that's part of your business, and influencers don't have to be the glamorous Los Angeles-based influencers. They can be people who are credible in your space. So you could do collaborations with them, you could do joint lives and other things. Or you could also there are companies that build their brands on memes. So you can consider that as well. Instagram is also great for e-commerce brands, and their paid user acquisition is fantastic, but it is expensive. So, but this is kind of an overview of Instagram. Facebook is also more consumer focused. So if you are in the B2B space, it might be less of a priority for you. However, Facebook has a fantastic feature, which is groups and communities. So that's where you can actually spend time to develop and cultivate a community. And that could be, depending on your business, that could be a great platform to start with, where the engagement is much higher in groups. Facebook has groups as a priority and has had it for a few years. So that could work if you want to develop that community around your brand or around a particular problem, and then your brand could be offering a solution. Paid user acquisition is also great on Facebook. It's expensive recently, since quite a lot of companies dropped their Facebook budgets. There is a little bit of movement in terms of the pricing of the user acquisition costs, but it is a great platform, and it's a huge platform. Of course, it covers the majority of the world, so definitely worth considering for consumer-focused brands mostly. Twitter, good for consumer business B2B. It's really good for engaging with opinion leaders, whether it's journalists, investors, other opinion leaders, and you really can connect with people. You can also see what opinions are out there. So it can actually give you a better understanding of the people you want to connect with. But at the same time, there are lots of bots, trolls, and spam. So even like running user acquisition on Twitter can be extremely expensive. Because for these reasons, and having an authentic engagement on Twitter can also be challenging, and you just have to be prepared that there can be a lot of misleading negative information or engagement with your account because of the bots, trolls, and spam. LinkedIn is one of my favorite platforms. It's really good for business, B2B, and personal branding. And an important thing is to lead with your personal account, because as a representative of the business, and then you can do updates on pages, on company pages, but really it's demonstrating what your brand is through your personal thought leadership campaign. LinkedIn is also great for lead generation campaigns. The groups are not as good as Facebook, but if you're talking about more specific, like work-related products, services, LinkedIn might be much better than Facebook, because again, for example, when people go on Facebook or Instagram, they're just usually in the mode of entertaining themselves, just passing time. They don't think about work. It's usually done in the breaks when people want to take a break from thinking about work. So, but on LinkedIn, they're in that mode, in that zone. So that's a good platform to capture your audience there. Another thing, and we're not going to go into a lot of detail with the rest of the platforms, but this is all, apart from LinkedIn, email marketing is super important. And I think a lot of people are chasing those numbers on social media, the followers, the likes, comments, but email is really one thing that I would recommend anyone to focus from day one of starting your business. There could be a separate session, and we did a separate session with NASDAQ on email marketing and how you can start growing your list. But Email is super important because it goes directly into email box of your consumer, of your customer, and the engagement is way higher. With social media, you inevitably deal with the algorithm that is constantly changing. You could try and play the Facebook algorithm. You could follow the blogs that talk about it, about recent changes, but it's constantly evolving. If hundreds of people on Facebook have one job, that's to think how to make that algorithm really smart and to get people engaged with the Facebook app. And still your content will be seen by a very small fragment of your followers. Same on LinkedIn, same on Twitter and Instagram. While with email, you're going directly into your customer's inbox, and usually emails are read within minutes. And then it's very unlikely that if your email is not read within a few minutes or a coming hour or two, then the open rate drops the following day, which means that it's pretty instant. So most of your customers will see your message once you contact them. So here's some numbers that you might be interested in. That's the average open rate. It could be higher, especially if you're early in the business. It drops off a little bit as you grow your list. So this is nothing to worry about, but you of course want to keep your engagement high. And again, there are lots of platforms where you can see, you can even, access different templates and write a cadence that will work well for you. So you can get help with that. But if one thing I would want you to remember today is like focus on email and maybe LinkedIn, depending on your business as well. And again, there is data that suggests that Tuesday is the best day to reach customers, and you should email your customers in the morning for best click-through open rate and click-through rate, and for lowest unsubscribe rate. But you should really think about your customer, how they live their life, what motivates them, when are they going to look at their phone, when is the right time for them to see that email. So for example, while generally Tuesday is a good day for emails, for entertainment companies, like weekend might be good because you're in a different mindset and you're prepared to consume that information than when you're relaxed versus on your busy Tuesday morning. And then there are lots of the other channels. You can focus on search optimization, lead magnets, online reviews, referrals, events, PR and press coverage. So I would really, again, step back and think about what are the key elements of your audience's life. What are the motivations, what they do, like why they do it, when they would need your product, and where in their life your communication, your brand would come through, and through which channel. And you can again look at competitors and see what's working for them. That will inform your choice of what to focus on. But it's impossible to do everything, so you really should put effort into what is providing to be the best fit with your customers' lifestyle and test those tools. If you look at some examples of the companies, you see that depending on the brand and their objective, different companies are doing exciting things online. So LegalZoom has a really good approach to Quora and providing answers to legal questions. Calm has a fantastic community of people who are interested in meditation, and they have a daily Calm community group on Facebook. While Everlane, they talk about their supply chain on their Instagram stories. They talk about how their products are produced, because this is something that is important to their audience, like where those t-shirts and dresses, like how they're produced, how they reach the consumer. Everlane is doing a great job on Instagram. So, okay, the next step, now that you have your tone of voice, you know what you're talking about, what problem you're solving, what solution you're offering, you know what your audience, how your audience is motivated, you have that tone of voice, we've talked about creating content. So how do you convert followers into consumers? And I feel like quite a lot of people are really feeling shy about selling because it's like, I can educate my audience, I can talk about the brand, I can talk about the problem. But when it comes to selling yourself, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have a consulting business, whether you have a technology business, like sales always for some reason seems to be this really uncomfortable process or aspect of the business. So what I want to say is that some people are better at sales than others, but when it comes to selling through social or through email and through other platforms that we discussed today, we should go back to the slide that we discussed earlier. How do you identify the challenge and anticipate the need? How do you deliver tangible value? In which format and when and where? And that should lead you to presenting that solution to your customer, and that if it's presented at the right time, if it solves the problem that they are dealing with, then they would be ready to purchase your product. And the other thing is, you should never be afraid to sell, to present your the benefits of your product, but you should never do it in this salesy way or in the with this agenda, or like hide your sales intention, because people are really smart. We all know, we can see like when we're being sold something versus when we're pitched something versus when someone is really sharing a piece of tangible value with us through this content. So consumers, yeah, they're smart and they will see through. So you should really focus on how can you authentically help your customer, and hopefully, if you've gone through all those steps that we've discussed today, your product is a genuine solution to the problem that your customer is facing. So offer solution, that's the kind of really important thing, and that should sell your product, your service, your brand. However, there is, I think often we don't talk about these other steps that have to happen before you sell your product, before you start selling. So one thing is, do you remember how we talked at the beginning about your objectives? So sometimes you can't skip a step. So if you're selling something completely new, it's not in the market yet, and you have to educate your audience about it, it's very unlikely that the sale will happen straight away. It could happen maybe based on a recommendation from a friend who's used it and they're saying, it's fantastic, you have to use it. But you have to educate your audience about it. So there are steps that you can't miss. So these are the 4 essential steps to consider. Awareness of your brand. Do people even know about you? So because if they don't know, how are they going to find you and how they're going to find your solution? Does the customer feel connected to your values and to the problem that you're solving and to how you're solving this problem? Perhaps is there social validation depending on your product? Again, have their friends used it? Have they recommended it? The friends or colleagues of the person following and had experience in working with your company? And then has this trust been established? And again, depending on your business, there are spaces where trust is absolutely crucial, but overall, you want the consumer to trust that you are offering the best solution for them. And therefore, that's when they can, with all these 4 steps, that's when a consumer can put their kind of decision together and make the step and buy your product. So back to something I've been talking about all the time throughout this presentation: understand your customer's thought process, because that's hugely important. That will help you understand where you fit into their life, how you can deliver value, and what really motivates them, what holds them back, what alternatives they have. And your tone of voice, your content, the platforms that you choose should be informed by understanding of your customer. And then the other thing is, do not rush it. When it comes to selling, there are, you can find different data. So for example, when it comes to email marketing, on average, the 8th email in your email cadence is when the customer is ready to purchase your product. And that just shows that your customer might take time to understand the product, to see if they really get it, to see if you're offering the right solution. And sometimes you just can't keep those steps. So if depending on your business and the platform that you choose, you really are there in the long term, like for the long term. So you want to build that relationship, build that trust, understanding of the product. And then hopefully at a certain point, your customers that have been following you because you've been delivering that value through the content, they will be ready to pull the trigger and go with your product or service because you have taken the time to build a relationship with the customer, and they now have the need for your product, or you formed that need for this product, and now they're ready to go with your brand and to purchase. And then how do you find time to create that content and to do all the things we talked about today? So if we go back to the marketing funnel, and this is not there are more complicated versions as well, but basically whatever you do, we usually try to kind of get person to go through this process and make a purchase. And then the thing is that in the world we live in, some steps can be skipped, especially if you've already achieved certain brand awareness, the trust towards your brand, maybe referrals are coming in. So you have to consider that, and you really have to keep watching like what really influences your customers' decisions and the thought process. And out of all these things, be honest with yourself why you selected a particular platform, and is it working for your business? So for example, often for early stage founders, getting press coverage, getting an article in TechCrunch is something that they really want, or getting on the cover of a magazine. That might not, that's a lot of effort and a lot of time, but that might not lead to the result you want. But it might be good if your objective is to make sure that investors are aware of the recent round you've made, or the industry is familiar, knows that you have introduced a new product, or maybe you have a completely new product or service that launched in the market, that could be good for you. So if it's like a first step, but PR specifically is very expensive. It's not guaranteed, and you could spend a lot of money, while you could consider focusing on building your email list and get much more from that. Or maybe you could double down on referrals. For example, if your business is a consulting company, referrals from your clients would be super crucial, and focus on that. So really analyze all of these tools and platforms, and be honest with yourself. Why do you want to choose one tool or platform over another? And does it really serve the purpose of your marketing plan? And another thing is just remember that once we have had this top of the funnel, there's whole bottom of the funnel that, again, we often forget about. So once you have customers, you don't just tick that box and stop. You want to nurture those relationships, make sure that you think about the customer life cycle. When does it end? What do you do when it ends? Can your customer recommend other customers? And really focus on that bottom funnel as well, because that can make your life of generating new leads much, much easier. All right. We talked, just jumped one slide. So one final thing. So we've gone through those 5 steps, and I hope you have a clearer picture of how to build your voice, start creating content, not to worry too much about it, but how to select the right platforms for you. And the last thing I want to talk about is evaluating the results, because you have to do it on a regular basis and see, just to make sure you're on the right track and you're following that map and you're not going into the wrong direction. So we've talked about different objectives before, and really when you are analyzing the results, the progress, you really just have to keep going back to those objectives and see, once you've mapped out what your targets are, you have to keep coming back and see, are these tools, is this content helping me achieve this goal, or am I trying to jump one of these steps, and therefore there's a gap? Is there a gap where I don't understand my customer, and I'm trying to push through something without taking those essential steps? So look at go back to your goals and go back to the motivation of your customer rather than the number of likes or the followers on social media, because those are vanity metrics that often can mislead you completely. And focus on something you can measure. But then the final word is that a lot of people think that all these companies that have overnight success, like that's what happened, but that's not really the case. So the real success is trial and error. But in this world of trial and error, I really encourage you to just keep your customer at the center of your work, of your marketing plan, of your business, and just constantly keep checking, what is your customers thinking? Has anything changed in the current environment? How you can deliver better value? And do you understand their thinking? And how do you offer the solution at the right time, in the right place, in the right format? So this is it. And now we can move to the Q&A, and Maria will be presenting some of the questions you guys submitted.
Ina, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Okay, we have lots of great questions. We will start with one from Oliver. What process or tools should we use to validate the beachhead before we define the future set for MVP?
Can you please repeat again the first part?
Yes. What process or tools should we use to validate the beachhead before, I'm sorry, that's probably a typo. So what process or tools should we use to validate before we define for a future set for our minimum viable product?
So is the question, can you use any tools to validate your MVP?
Yes. And what would those tools be?
Yeah, I would really go back to the customer. It's not necessarily about the tools or the process. It's really about understanding your customer, because we often, when we have this exciting idea and we're sure it's going to work, maybe we have technology that has not, like, it's very new. So we're so confident that people need it that it's easy to just jump the steps of talking to real potential customers and seeing what they think, and avoiding family and friends feedback, because they wish you well, they will be cheering for you, and they will agree with you and with your idea, and they think it's brilliant and you should go ahead. But you can find ways to talk to customers outside of your immediate circle, and also outside of your comfort zone, to understand what are their reactions to your potential product. So I would just say it's super simple. It's just back to the homework of understanding what your product is, what problem you're truly solving, not kind of chasing the titles of the brand new technology, or that you will be impressed in TechCrunch, but really thinking, how do you solve that problem? Can you live with that? Can this be your life in the long term? Do you believe in your own mission? And then talking to the customer, cannot underestimate how important it is to talk to the customer. So I would focus on that.
Wonderful. And I love some of these comments. Thank you all for paraphrasing. Avoid family and friends feedback, LOL, and reach out individually. Yes, absolutely.
There is, you can look at the mom's test and that kind of stuff. But really, yeah, the family will be supporting you, of course. But really talk to get out of your comfort zone, and especially listen to people who do not agree with you, or who say that they might not need it. And another thing is that I think I mentioned this in the slides, but I just think it's so important. Whenever we talk about competitors, early founders often think, and I don't really have competitors because my technology is so new, or my idea is so fresh. And if you talk to a journalist, they will not buy that, because they know that there is competition, whether it's direct competition or whether it's indirect competition. And the biggest thing in the indirect competition space is where you spend your time. So, and what are the alternatives to your product or service? You might think that something, and again, that's back to the question of validating MVP. So you might think, like, obviously people will need it because it's so much easier once you learn how to use the product, for example. But the end user might think, I'm really happy with the existing solution. So it might be clunky, the design might not be as good, maybe user experience is not ideal, but it's working. and the cost of changing into a new product could be really high. So there are all of those things to think about. But again, it just goes back to understanding those customers, talking to your customers, and really listening to those who do not agree and outside of your immediate circle.
Wonderful, Ina. Thank you. Okay, we have a great list of questions. In your experience, what are the top 2 mistakes that you have seen startups make when it comes to marketing?
The biggest mistake, I think I actually wrote a piece of an article on that, is wanting to be in the media for wrong reasons. Just focusing on that shiny external image, and kind of really not thinking about all the rest of the hard work that needs to happen before you can start getting press coverage. Press coverage is super expensive. For some reason, many founders and companies are like, I don't understand why one would want to be in the media, but press coverage is not necessarily as important as your email list, or perhaps your own blog, or the content you will be developing on LinkedIn, for example, or even your own corporate or your company blog where you talk about your product. Because once if your product, if you describe like the release of your new product, why you've done it, and you find those people who are excited about it and who really get it before journalists get it, they might be your early followers and they might be your early adopters. And those are the people whom you really need to connect with and take their opinion into account and see how they're using the product, while being straight away just going and pitching the press release to the media. It just can be misleading. You can spend a lot of time. It's expensive. You might not get the results. You might be misunderstood at that point. And often it's just like that need to be in the media rather than focusing on the product. And it's not as sexy, to kind of just double down on your product. And it's nice to have some press coverage, but it's definitely not necessarily the most important step. And the second thing, not talking to customers. One of the biggest mistakes I just see companies making all the time, just because, again, when you're so excited about your product, you're so convinced that it's going to work, it's really easy to assume what your customer wants. But times change, situations change. We're living in unprecedented times. Who would know that Airbnb would crumble? Fantastic product. So now Airbnb is looking into how they can save the business. So yeah, talking to customers is extremely important, and understanding what the needs are, how they're changing over time, and if you should incorporate that into your product roadmap.
Wonderful, Ina. Thank you. And for all of you still joining, we have a few more questions. While you are listening or typing in your question, please take 2 or 3 minutes to complete the survey that was just placed in the chat. Both Ina and NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center would love to hear your feedback and would love to hear what future topics Ina might cover and what other topics we might be able to stand up for all of you here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. So Ina, the next question, what are some of the best practices that you would recommend for B2B2C startups from the get-go while creating their marketing strategy?
Overall, like it would be good to know like what space the person is having in mind, to give a best practice example. So it's a little bit of a tricky question. Can you repeat it just again?
Sure.
I had it on my screen and then it's gone.
We can ask this person who submitted this question why.
Yeah, if you could expand a little bit, that would be good.
Either chat us or resubmit your question with a little bit more detail, and I'm happy to ask again. So the next question, what kind of emotional response should we try to generate in potential customers?
So again, this goes back to your customer. Like, what is your, what do you want to, what product you have, what problem it's solving for your customer, and therefore how you can help your customer get where they want to. So for example, if you want your customer, like how do you want your customer to feel? That's what you should, like, do you want them to get excited about something and have this action, or do you want them to use the app and to relax? So depending on, do you want to give them like comfort, or do you want to give them a sense of adventure, and so that they would keep exploring your product? Depending on that, you want to consider the emotion you want to generate with your content. So it really depends on where your customer is and where you want to take them with your product.
Thank you, Ina. Okay, we have another question. Is there a specific platform that you would recommend for content creation, or maybe a template for content creation?
So Canva is the best platform for creating a ton of content. For any social media platform, you can create animated content in Canva. I think they have video templates, so where you can create, based on the visuals and text, you can actually create videos through animation, and you can export it as a GIF, you can export it as a video. So that's the best easy platform with a ton of templates. It's going to make your life so much easier. And you already, even if you don't have kind of good sense of what good design is, you can start exploring it through Canva templates. That's number one thing. And then Apple's video editor, if you want to use that, that's really easy to make short videos, and it's intuitive, and they have a free version as well. So those would be my two most popular platforms, and I use Canva all the time. And you can develop a sense of design through Canva.
Those are great recommendations. All right, let's see. What are the top marketing strategies that a SaaS/software company startup should follow?
So this one is actually, it can be, on the one hand, it's a little bit easier because there's a less of a barrier for people to discover software as a service. On the other hand, if your audience is enterprise, then it might be harder to get a contract because of the hoops you need to jump through. So the number one thing, have a really fantastic product, write a blog post, and find a few early adopters who will be on board with that. That would be the most kind of important 3 steps, but it starts with a great product. And then you can start with like user acquisition through, again, depending on the product, could be Facebook, for example. But early adopters that you usually can find in the tech space, for example, especially if you're in one of the tech hubs in the United States, whether you're in San Francisco, New York, or Boulder, or Texas, in Austin, you can find those right people who will be the first people who will start talking about your product.
Wonderful, Ina. And then we just have a few questions about you and your journey.
All right.
And how people can connect with you, whether you work with startups on implementing marketing strategies. So I would love to redirect those questions likely to our follow-up email, or the answers to those questions. We absolutely can refer you to Ina and her LinkedIn. And I'm sure that Ina would be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have worked with a number of startups, and again, it was fun times when Facebook and Skype were small companies, and working with them and understanding, like I was working with them on their entry into the Russian market, which is another level of complexity that has been added. I work with startups. I work with a lot of technology-focused and developer-focused startups in San Francisco. We did together achieve fantastic coverage in TechCrunch and VentureBeat and other publications. So for those who are interested in that, but mostly the strongest part is really applying that consumer understanding towards complex subjects and helping startups start talking about that in a way that is appealing to consumers. And you can find me on social media. There will be contact details in the presentation that will be shared. So yes, you're very welcome to connect with me on any platform. LinkedIn is great, Twitter as well, email. Those are 3 main platforms that are best for discussing work.
Wonderful, Ina. You're such an expert. And to all of you here, please again, fill out the survey for both feedback for both Ina and for the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. It is in the chat. We would love to hear from you and design more programming like this. Ina, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to this community, to share your insights, and to set such a great overview for us. On behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we sincerely thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for those who joined and asked questions. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and you learned something. Even if you learned one thing from the slides, I'll be really happy. And please feel free to email me and tell me what that one thing is, or just tweet at me and NASDAQ Center and share your thoughts about the session.
Thank you so much, Ina. And for all of you still with us, we want to hear from you. Again, please fill out that survey. And if you're looking forward to any of our upcoming programming, we would again like to invite you to tomorrow, this coming Thursday, our author in residence, Get a Meeting with Anyone. And next Tuesday, we have an incredible town hall on economic recovery, specifically for startups and small businesses. So we have some great upcoming programming. We would love to see you there. Join our email list, follow us on Eventbrite, and we will see you in the future. Have a lovely day, everyone.